welcome to the Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy, the free podcast for motivated teachers and school leaders who want to inspire their students and school community in literacy learning. Make sure you subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast player, and for more amazing literacy resources, check out the show notes provided with every episode.
Hi, I'm Sharon and I'm the host of A Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy. In every Toolkit episode, we bring you specific resources, tools, strategies, tips, techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy. Firstly, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we gather on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs. And welcome, Phil.
Thanks, Sharon, and welcome back to part 2 of our podcast. Enjoy.
So what I've now given him space to do is try a strategy and read that paragraph again.
So if he's having a little mini practice at this.
Yes. So that's part of the space that we give isn't, we've both dropped into the chasm of despair where I'm going, there's way too many things here to do. And the child going, see, I told you I can't do it, and I'm telling myself now I'm not any good at it. But instead...
But you've given him this strategy.
Immediately. So I've said, I've noticed how well you keep your eyes in the book or in the paragraph. Now I want you to keep your mind in the paragraph. And do you know what? I didn't even demonstrate it. I just used that language. I want you to read that again, and this time keep your mind in it. He knew exactly what to do because of the language.
Yep, which comes from Jennifer Saravello.
Yeah, and that wouldn't be... could I find that elsewhere? Of course, there's many, but it's an action.
Yeah.
That's the important thing. A strategy is always an action, and it shouldn't take, a good strategy shouldn't take a bazillion words.
So he has a bit of a go at that, and then he gives you feedback on how it went? Or you see it actually happen?
Right. So he reads it again, and as he's reading... the strategy is keep your mind in it. He reads and I say, so let's read this again and then tell me what's in your mind. Keep your mind in it, and then I'm going to get you to tell me what you just read. And what he does is he now practices it, and that's what I'm giving him space to do. Practice this strategy and see how it works. So he rereads, he turns to me, tells me what he's just read, and says immediately, that works. So the space is about practice.
Yeah.
And the reason why that was harder for him than the previous ones was because it was a much longer paragraph. And that's where he then says, that really helps me. Or if I had post-it notes and could write down, what's happening on each page.
So you gave him some space to say this, you just encouraged him to...
All right. This is what would have led him to that then. What would have I said? All right, so that's a new strategy for you. Keep your eyes and mind in the book. How does it help you? So that's what I would have said. How is that helping you? And he said, for every paragraph that's helping me, because it's a chapter book, it's going to help me because like tomorrow... after I read today, tomorrow, if I don't remember, what will help is if today, at the end of each page, I write my post-it note.
But you didn't prompt him on that.
I didn't prompt, but I did prompt with How is this going to help you?
Yeah, and then that made him think of other things that might help him.
Yes, and his next big thing was, from chapter to chapter or from page to page. So at the moment, it's from page to page that he's having.
So the two things that helped was that you asking that question, how did it help you? But the second thing that you've done is given him some space to talk about those things.
Yes.
Because you could have shortened the whole conversation and said, right, that's it.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. But I have to leave him with a solution to what his current problem is.
Because the current problem is not just the paragraph, but it's
because
page
chapter
to
books
page.
are also new to him. And so this holding across, because he said, I can read a chapter and then I don't remember the next day what happened there. But we absolutely know that he will not be writing post-it notes for very long.
Yeah.
That is a short-term strategy for him. That's for right now. He was absolutely amazed at what he could remember, just from that one, reading that one paragraph and keeping his mind on that. Now, I'm going to say the teacher made a fabulous connection because the teacher was observing me, doing this reading conference, and he made the amazing connection that the turn and tell, that I talk about as a strategy at the end of independent reading time.
Where they get into pairs and they tell each other what
turn and tell a partner about your reading today.
Yeah.
He said, oh my goodness, that would so help, wouldn't it? When I'm reading and I get a chance to tell at the end of reading what I've been reading today.
That's why turn and tell is so vital for comprehension, for everything really, isn't it?
And essentially what this little man did in micro was exactly that. He turned and told me what he'd been reading, paragraph by paragraph. So his writing it on the Post-its is an independent way of practicing that.
Yep.
So what he will then know is that if he's got the opportunity to turn and tell at the end of his reading time, he's got his Post-it notes there to help him.
So next time
hold that information.
Next time you see him, it might be in a month's time.
I won't, but the teacher
will.
Yes. What we did, so the part that we haven't talked about for this 5-minute process is that in his own words, I wrote down what he will be doing in his reading every day.
On the protocol sheet or conferring notes?
No.
Oh.
In this school, every child has a reading calendar.
Right.
And at the bottom of the reading calendar page, they have reading goals.
By the way, the reading calendars are on Teachific as well.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
And this school has designed them, they've designed them with their own school logo and to meet their own purposes. On our reading calendars for 2025, all the dates are still there, but instead of Saturday and Sunday, we've put in a goals reflections box.
Okay, so it goes in there.
So if it goes there, this is another critical part about making all of this work, that strategy or that strategy goal that they now have is visible every time. They're getting that reading calendar out every day.
Okay, so then they're seeing
during
the goal.
Reading. So the goal is right there, right then, in their words.
Now, if they achieve that goal in that same week or over a couple of weeks, but they're not seeing the teacher in a conferring situation, they're just recording that they've got it on their calendar.
They can reflect on that and a weekly reflection on how I'm going with goals. And I need to make this quite clear too. That individual goal may not be their only reading goal.
Yeah, true.
There may be class reading goals as well.
True.
But this goal that's come from that conferring situation. It might be adding on to a goal we've got in class. Remember, in this situation, like this is my very first reading conference with them, which for most of you at the beginning of a school year is the same thing, but it will help. So I'll talk about, some other children, other students, but for another teacher, they said, wow, you've done 2 conferences. I can see a class goal already because I've actually noticed this.
Across students.
Yes. So this is great. They've got it as an individual goal, but I will also be bringing this as, I'll be doing a whole class mini lesson, strategy lesson on this.
And might I say that the teacher who's sometimes roving around the room and seeing the open reading calendars, they might not be conferring with students, but they can actually visually see what's happening in a quick way.
By what's being recorded.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So goals on the sheet, if the goals are somewhere visible where students are, and if it's on a reading calendar, it's a great place for them to be because they can actually show evidence of if they're using the goal. We see children, next to the goal, they might put a check, a tick to say, yeah, I used that today. Or we might even see, a number of times that it was used.
Yep.
But we need a strategy goal is of no import if it's not being used. So this is a way of making it highly visible, of us being able to be reminded. So at the beginning of, as students are going to be reading independently, we can get them to revisit their own, what's your reading goal? They might have physical things like Post-it notes that are being used to help with that. But it's also a very clear record of what strategy goals students have had over time.
Yep.
In their turn and tell may in fact be showing how that strategy goal is playing out.
Yep.
Or in reflecting on that to say, yes, I can really keep my mind in the text now because here is a chapter summary. And
students can also be finding out without a teacher what they're having a struggle with. And yes, sometimes a teacher's setting with goal with them. Are they sometimes setting their own goal? They're noticing the struggle and they set their own
goal. Could they set their own goal?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like
that's the ultimate, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Especially,
and maybe you're working kids towards that. You're modelling that when you're conferring how to do all this. But if they can start to identify things and set goals, but they still need to check in with
and identify
teacher.
Strategies.
Yep.
Well, really, we're only going to be conferring with a child once a month. Probably.
But they are seeing the whole class teaching and they are seeing things that they need to.
This isn't the only.
And they might say, that is something I need to do, and that might become their goal because they're seeing it from the classroom teacher.
That's the importance of it isn't just in conferring that we are setting strategy goals.
Yeah.
It is whole class. There are things that at this year level with this complexity of text to be able to get in it, we need this as strategy. Yeah. So we are,
so everything relates to each other, doesn't it?
Yes.
There's a complete cycle of things going on here.
Yes, yeah. But the conferring gives us what it says to a child is, right, I'm tuned into something for you right now. It's important enough for me to be checking in with you every month.
There's 2 things. It's really honing in on that thing, but it's also giving them a process for their own setting goals and blah, blah, blah.
And self-regulation.
And self-regulation.
Yes.
So there's 2 things going on there.
Yes.
Anyway, I think we've probably ironed that one out, Sharon.
Okay, one child.
Oh, that's one child.
That's one child, and I'm going to tell you about all of them.
Yeah, and I think if we go into that sort of detail, then we're not just learning about that child, we're learning about all these processes that are going along.
Yeah.
And then we'll make connections between the 4 children that we're going to talk about. So Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to talk about another And this is the wonder, isn't it, of working with students, is how rich and how interesting and diverse and the same it is. Do you know, it's all of those things. You know, and so, okay, here we are sitting with another Year 3 child. What does he come with? Right, so he also is in chapter books, much more complex chapter books. Longer, more sophisticated. No graphics now. Not that that's important here. However, well, it still is. So he comes, I explain, or I say what a conference is. You know, I'm going to be listening and observing, and I point out that we're reading the first page and on to the second page, and then we'll have a chat.
And we're only going for a minute?
I determine how much I'm going to get him to read, which I think is going to take about a minute.
Yep.
You know, and I look and it's 2 paragraphs.
Yep. Okay.
And I think that's a good way to break it up. All right. So he reads.
And he hasn't told you about a problem he's got
He
yet?
hasn't, no.
Whereas the other one did.
Yes, he came because I asked him about the chapter book and he told me he was new to that. This young man just launched straight into reading.
Right.
All right. As he's reading, I am noting in 3 sections of the protocol. There is a section that lets me fill in words that the child has read correctly. There's a section that lets me fill in words the child has misread. And there is also a section that says evidence of comprehension monitoring. There's 6 things listed beneath that, and one of them is stopped after pronouncing a nonsense word and self-corrected it. And by nonsense word, we mean they said something that wasn't recognisable as a word and then they corrected that. So I have collected in words the child has read correctly. I've only written 1 word in there and it's quite a complex word and he's read it correctly. I've got 4 words in the misread box and I've got 1 in the stopped and self-corrected. So as he's reading, I have observed that he knows when he has misread a word, but 4 times he didn't correct them. Once he did, and I also know that he can read quite complex words because I wrote an example of that down. So after he finishes reading, I say, and I think I used that same term again, you keep your eyes well on the text.
And just interrupting, so you observed this as one of the main issues with his reading. There might have been other things.
Yes. But because it's a short amount of time and I start noting those things, that's the thing I want to ask about. So I say, I notice.
Because it's the most obvious thing that you've noticed as a teacher?
Yes.
Yep.
Now, there is a really important thing to say here, that if we were doing, as many people would do with students in choosing a book to read, that we would say if a child misreads, so if their accuracy level, for reading was 5 words out of 100 makes that way too difficult to read, we would be saying that this is exactly a book that's too hard for him. But I actually want to be conferring with children in books that aren't just so, like if they are reading books so easy for them all the time,
you can't find out.
But are they ever growing?
Yeah.
If I'm not bringing them strategies to get into more complex text, which is why my regular strategy mini lesson teaching is so important,
And often through a read aloud that it's up a level.
Yeah, but to get into their own books, it can't just always be. So for their own independent reading, and Tim Shanahan has talked a lot about this. In fact, there was a webinar through the International Literacy Association just last week, and Tim Shanahan has written quite a bit about this. We need students, the older they're getting, knowing how to get into more complex text.
And not just an easy text.
Yes. And to know and to be given, regularly be given terrific explicit strategy teaching to know how they can employ those strategies now to get into more complex reading, more complex text. So this young man, I can see straight away, and there is a box on the protocol, word identification and spelling strategies. Now, his decoding strategies, I can see he's got good decoding strategies by, the complex word that he read correctly that I've recorded. But out of the other 4, this is what I said. I said, I notice that when you read, you know when you've misread a word, but you don't fix it. And he says, yeah, I don't know what else to do. So what he's saying is he has no other strategy than to decode using letter sound strategy.
But the language you used in questioning him was quite specific.
Yeah, because I'm trying to find out what strategy is he using and relying on, and what other strategies does he know that he might not be employing.
So it's I noticed
when you were reading that you knew when you had misread a word.
Were you just implying that, or?
No, because when he would read it, you could hear the doubt in his voice, but he would never go back to check it. And that's what was interesting to me.
So you knew he was aware of that.
Yes.
Not knowing the word. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, it was apparent that he knew that he'd misread it, but he didn't fix it.
All right.
He didn't do anything to.
So you've told him you've noticed this. Now,
yes.
Now what's happening?
Right. So now here's the next fascinating thing. Is I said, so let's go back to those words. He knew exactly where, and he knew exactly which 4 words I was talking about. Not because I'd written them down, but he knew. So the first word was, so it was talking about, it was the abbreviation for kindergarten. So kindy. He went back to that word. And we went back. He said, this is the first word. He said, kindy. Kindy. He said, I know it's not right. And I said, how did you work? What strategy did you use to pronounce that read that as kindy? He said, I can see the word kind in there. And then I said, all right, what about this? Try a different sound. He went, oh, it's kindy. Now, I didn't even say to him which sound, which letter he should try with a different sound. That's all I said. And why did I say try a different sound? It's because it's on this list on the protocol sheet.
Right.
That it's a strategy. Try a different sound.
So it's a decoding strategy.
Yeah. So word identification. So we've got decoding, by letter, by sound.
Yep. And this is the second one?
The second one is try a different sound.
Okay. So there's a gradation of word recognition skills.
Yeah. Now, he is year 3 and he's never heard that as a strategy before.
Yes, that's something you would be doing in
Reception, from
5-year-olds.
foundation, yeah. So he says, so I just say, try a different sound, not even suggesting which letter. And he goes, that's kindy. All right, I said, okay, next word. Now, of course, I have also determined by the words that he's read what I think is a strategy he's not using. Right, so the next word is, he goes, right, it's this one, manig. I said, try a different sound. He said, it's manage.
Right. So straight away he got it.
Straight away, and to be honest, I can't remember the other 2 words now, but he could go straight to them and
change them.
'Cause
he had the
so what that then allowed us to do was, well, actually, without going back, he said, oh, well, that makes sense what's going on now. So, of course, it's immediately got him into sense-making, meaning-making with all of that, which he wasn't doing successfully before, because even though he knew the word wasn't being read correctly, he wasn't attempting anything to make meaning.
It's a huge thing, isn't it? That, it's the second on those strategies that by just giving him that, it's opened up a whole world for him.
Yes.
On solving words.
Yes. And how just from a word solving and comprehension level, we just changed that text from a text that
was too difficult,
was actually difficult, into a well within range.
So it's immediately got him into a whole new range of texts.
Yes, for not just casting his eyes over, but for accurate and meaningful reading.
And we'll take a break there from part 2 of our podcast. We look forward to you joining us for part 3. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. To make sure you don't miss any literacy learning tips and insights, please subscribe to our show on your favourite podcast player. At Q Learning, our literacy specialists draw on over 30 years of teaching and international consulting experience to deliver world-class learning solutions. We equip, empower and support teachers to become their authentic selves. To find out about upcoming webinars and about how Q can help you and your school, visit qlearning.com.au. And you can get even more amazing teaching resources right now at teachific.com.au. Stay tuned.